This is exciting, isn't it?
Here we go, guys, in 5, 4, 3.
Here we go.
It's time for Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive.
Thank you for good programming, and I appreciate the content and really enjoyed every moment.
It's a privilege to have you on your station and listen. It's good stuff. It's very educational.
It's time for Joan Esposito on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Howdy. This Wednesday, August 12th, here's your little bit of advice for the day. Always check your helmet for snakes before you put it on, okay? Maybe every Wednesday I'll have a pearl of wisdom like that to share with you. But that's for today. Always check your helmet because you never know when a poisonous snake is inside. Okay, we're only dealing with the poisonous snakes of politics. Not as immediately lethal, but lethal over time. Interesting primary results. David Crowley pulling up a surprise upset in Wisconsin. All of the prediction markets and the polls had progressive Francesca Hong wildly ahead. Big cushion. It was a close race. It was a very close race. But David Crowley won. David Crowley, who, you know, we talked to Peter Giangreco, and Peter yesterday said David Crowley was one of his clients for the strategy group. And he talked about the race. But at that point, it looked like Francesca Hong had it wrapped up. Apparently not. Apparently, voters went, I don't know who they were talking to, the pollsters. I don't know who they were talking to, but boy, oh boy, did they have it wrong. Now, it was a close race. I'm not saying that David Crowley ran away with it, but David Crowley was supposed to be pretty much brutally beaten. And that, my friend, did not happen. Right after his victory, he gave a news conference, and this is what Democrats need to do. This is what Democrats need to do. He said that Francesca Hong not only congratulated him, but she is going to support his candidacy. She is going to go on a tour around the state with David Crowley. Listen, this is really, really quick, so listen carefully. This is David Crowley making that announcement that Francesca Hong is going to go around the state and campaign with him. Listen to this.
Do you expect the other Democratic candidates, including Francesca Hong, not once together and support your campaign against Trump?
Absolutely. We're going to be getting together relatively soon to actually start our unity tour.
Yep. Francesca Hong doing what Democrats need to do. If they don't come out on top, they need to get behind the candidate, because this is bigger than any one person, this midterm election. It is going to be, it's going to be hairy. I told you, I've repeatedly referred to the interview that Congressman Jim Himes gave, where he said he thinks Trump, if it looks like the Democrats are winning, especially if they're winning big and in the Senate, Trump is going to find a way to declare the race, all the races invalid, assert that there was some sort of interference, and try to negate the results. Trump did a really conservative right-wing guy's podcast the other day, and the guy, of course, sucking up to Trump, said, well, you know, maybe you should just, it might have come to it where you just have to federalize the election. And Donald Trump didn't say yes, he didn't say no, but he said, you know, you never know what's going to happen. Stranger things have happened. So he's clearly planning and plotting. Hillary Clinton was on Kara Swisher's podcast. Kara Swisher is a very famous tech reporter. She wrote a book called Burn Book. And she, by herself, she has a podcast. She also has a podcast with Scott Galloway, wildly popular folks in the world of podcasting. She was talking to Hillary Clinton. And Hillary Clinton also sees a future where Donald Trump really interferes before, during, and after the midterm elections. Listen to what Hillary Clinton shared with Kara Swisher.
I think it's going to be likely that Trump is even more out of control after the midterms. And let's assume, from my perspective, the best happens. We take back the House, we take back the Senate. He's not going to work with them. He's going to do everything he can to undermine them. He's going to instruct people who work for him not to respond to inquiries or even subpoenas. He's going to be in a big standoff with the Congress. And he's going to be using executive orders and whatever power he has from the presidency to pursue his agenda. I think he'll be pardoning a lot more corrupt people. You know, you look at the list of the pardons that he's given, it's a total transactional exchange. You or somebody on your behalf gives me money. I don't care if you've cheated, elderly people in nursing homes, which one of the people that he pardoned did, to great cost to them, and you owe them billions of dollars in compensation. I'm going to take the money and just erase that. And I think Democrats can run against some of those pardons. Most people have no idea what he has done.
What he's given out. What he's given out.
And what he's taken for it. I mean, the amount of money that he's taken for it.
Yeah. Everybody that you know in political life and respect is saying exactly what you have said and what I have said. Donald Trump is going to find probably several different ways to try to interfere with the midterms because, he's not going to put all his eggs in one basket. That's not what Donald Trump does. He does something or says something outrageous, and then he kind of waits to see how it lands. Does it get traction? If it does, well, then that's an idea he sticks with. If it doesn't get traction, then he moves on to something else that he thinks will try to accomplish what it is he wants. So I think the answer to how he's going to interfere with the midterms is all of the above. Any way you can think that he might interfere, he will. What does he have to lose? He has to lose nothing. Nothing, nothing, nothing. And as has been pointed out before, there's still the chances of us taking the Senate, while they certainly exist, they're not huge. This isn't going to be a rout in the Senate. But Donald Trump, have you noticed? Every once in a while, there's somebody that just gets under his skin. That person in this midterm is John Ossoff. Now, maybe it's because people are starting to say that John Ossoff might just be a great presidential candidate in 2028. Maybe that's what's got him spooked. Or he just, he has this obsession with Georgia. Remember back to Brad Raffensperger, you got to find me 11,000 more votes? Georgia has always been a state that Donald Trump has fixated on. So maybe it's that Ossoff is from Georgia. But by all accounts, Ossoff is going to retain his seat in the Senate. And that is apparently driving Donald Trump crazy. So he's going to do something. What is he going to do? He's probably going to do everything you've heard he might do. Let's go back to the big story of the week, Donald Trump in the food container. Yep, Donald Trump in a catering container. God, doesn't it sound like the setup for a joke? But when he was leaving the NATO meeting, there were, according to the Secret Service, they believed that they had a credible threat against his life. That possibly, I think they thought Iran was going to try to shoot down Air Force One. So the press got on, cabinet members, high-ranking aides got on, Donald Trump got on Air Force One, but then Donald Trump went to the front of the plane where they had a catering container, and he got inside the catering container so they could lock it up. and transfer him by truck to a military jet. I don't know how big that container was. Maybe there were multiple containers. Maybe there was only one. But did Donald Trump bring Stephen Miller along? No. Marco Rubio? No. Any of his other White House aides? Well, there apparently were some that got the container treatment. Dan Scavino, Natalie Harp, also known as Printer Girl, and Walt Nuda, his very close aide who faced a lot of criminal charges previously. Those were the three people that Donald Trump apparently most wanted to save. Not Stephen Miller, not any other of the high-ranking White House aides, not Marco Rubio, and certainly not any member of the press. Pete Hegseth was also on the military plane, but he did not travel by container. I guess because he's the Secretary of Defense, you know, he could just go get on a military aircraft without raising any suspicion. So probably Pete Hegseth walked in through the door as opposed to being loaded up in a food container in a food truck. There is understandably outrage from the press corps that he put their lives at risk. And yes, for the people who texted in yesterday, I know that keeping the president safe is the priority. But there have been times in the past when other presidents have had to be moved secretly. And in those occasions, nobody was left out to be a decoy. They could have said, looks like Air Force One is going to have to sit here for a day or so to get some new parts. So all the White House aides and all the journalists have to get off. And then after they got off, they could have taken off. What Iran was going to know within 5 minutes that the plane was unloaded? I don't think so. But even then, you put the pilots at risk. Maybe you say they're military and that's what they signed up for. I don't know. But he slunk away. Is that a word? Slink, slank, slunk? In his little food container that apparently had 3 other people in it. Not a Secret Service agent, as near as I can tell, but 3 of his closest aides, the people who he wanted to make sure, especially Natalie, who worships the ground he walks on, wanted to make sure they didn't get hurt. The rest of you, well, you know what? Easy come, easy go. Yes. You know, I'm not going to say anything else because the other things that I want to say are kind of mean. So I will just think them. I can think mean thoughts. You can't criticize me for thinking mean thoughts. So I will just not express them. Oh, by the way, remember former Olympian David Hearn, who was charged with vandalizing the reflecting pool, along with some other folks who had the misfortune to try to touch the water. And Jeanine Pirro suddenly dropped the charges against him and the charges against everybody else who was accused of vandalism, went into the White House and said it's because Doug Burgum lied to all of us. The guy who's head of Parks and Interior, he lied to all of us. He misled us all because she had a couple of boxes, and it's believed that whatever was in those boxes was the proof that it was the contractor who messed up the reflecting pool. So the charges were dropped. But Donald Trump, once he sets a course of action, he cannot pivot. He can't. I don't know if that's his age. I don't know if that's his medical state. I don't know if that's just his personality. But he has continued Even after Jeanine Pirro said Doug Burgum lied to you, here's the evidence, here's the proof, Donald Trump still wants David Hearn to be responsible. He still wants David Hearn to be responsible. And there are reports that new charges are going to be brought against David Hearn. Now, I don't know how that's going to work, what the charges are going to be. Will Jeanine Pirro be asked to testify? Inquiring minds want to know. Yeah. Inquiring minds want to know. Norm Eisen, who was a lawyer in the Obama administration, he was being interviewed. He was being interviewed on cable news. He sat down and he was talking with Caitlin Collins on CNN. He was, that's what he was. He was special counsel for a while during the Obama White House. And Caitlin asked him about the White House asking the Department of Justice, Todd Blanche, who will never say no. I love you so much, I will never say no to you, Mr. Trump. Asking the DOJ to somehow refile charges against David Hearn. Caitlin Collins asked Norm Eisen about that. This is what he had to say.
So unbelievable. They said in that filing that there was no evidence beyond a reasonable doubt because the damage was caused by a botched and rushed installation. So certainly the very first thing that the judge will hear if charges are brought again is the words of the U.S. Attorney's Office blaming the Department of the Interior. You know, when I was special counsel to President Obama in the White House, we had a memo that the president could not interfere with or intervene in enforcement cases precisely to avoid this kind of thing. So the outrageousness of it won't stand in a court of law if it comes back. And I assume the reason we read about it today in the Wall Street Journal and elsewhere is because people in DOJ are as horrified as I am and as Davey is at this possibility.
In other words, the story got out because of a leak from somebody in the Department of Justice. But you know Todd Blanche, he'll do whatever Trump wants. That's why Trump wanted him. Todd Blanche, his whole world is Donald Trump. So if Donald Trump says to him, find a way to indict David Hearn, by God, that's what they're going to do. And Jeanine Pirro isn't exactly standing up to Trump. It has been reported that she has convened a top secret grand jury. And nobody knows why. And the belief is that some other move is going to be made by Pirro in an effort to please Donald Trump. Nobody knows what this grand jury is doing. It is a rare, secret grand jury. Frankly, probably we weren't even supposed to know it was happening. So as they say in the news business, stay tuned. We'll see what nonsense Jeanine Pirro is up. Maybe she's trying to make it up to Donald Trump. Oh, I couldn't prosecute David Hearn because, we would have been laughed out of court. But I'll do this for you. Think that's it? I don't know. Oh, by the way, the phone lines and the text lines are open, 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. And finally, a story that I read. It was first reported in the Military Times, but it has been picked up by other mainstream media outlets. Apparently, some of the sailors on the USS Abraham Lincoln have tried to commit suicide by jumping off the boat into the ocean. Obviously, it's difficult to get complete reporting. It is believed to be so far there have been 3 of them. One of them is the husband of Annabelle Loma, she was the one that the Military Times interviewed. Now, you remember the USS Abraham Lincoln was deployed in November. They were supposed to go home. All the sailors on that were supposed to get switched out in May. But because of the war of choice that Donald Trump is waging against Iran, they were ordered to stay, and everybody's enlistment, that particular enlistment, was extended. They were deployed in November. They have been out there for 10 months, and there is no indication that they will be coming home anytime soon. And at least 3 that we know of have tried to kill themselves. So, yeah, Donald Trump cares deeply about our military. Deeply. Donald Trump doesn't give the military a second thought. They're just pawns. They're just pieces on I won't even say a chessboard because he's not that smart. Let's say a checkerboard. Pieces for him to move around. They're not real people. They're a means to accomplish a goal. We want to threaten Iran. Well, we've got an aircraft carrier there, baby. We've had it there so long that the sailors are actually starting to commit suicide, or at least attempt to. It is heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking. Like I said, if you want to read the whole article, you can go to www.militarytimes.com. You know, he left aides, even high-ranking aides and journalists on a plane that he believed could potentially be shot down. He's leaving sailors deployed far past when they should have gone home. They should have gone home in May, remember? He doesn't care about anybody but himself. It's a lesson we see over and over and over again. We're going to, sorry to end on such a down note. We are going to take a break. We're going to be back with your calls and your texts, 773-763-9278. We'll be back with the news of the day and your thoughts about it right after this.
This is Chicago's Progressive Talk, 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and online at WCPT820.com, where facts matter.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. Every weekday afternoon from 2 to 5 p.m. on WCPT 820.
We are getting a lot of texts about Donald Trump leaving the NATO summit in a food container. Here's one that started it off. At the NATO meeting in Ankara, an intelligence report indicated that the Iranians might be planning to assassinate Trump. Trump was spirited off Air Force One to a smaller Air Force jet and abandoned to their fate the staff members and reporters who were uninformed of the threat and remained as decoys on Air Force One. Had Trump been the captain of the Titanic, he would have been off that ship in the first lifeboat. And this is from Lois. Donald Trump in the food container sounds like the name of a new sitcom. Here's another one. I hope that Trump was full of coleslaw and gravy in the container. And No, I can't say that one. I'm sorry. And somebody sent me a picture of a truck lifting up a big food container, and the caption was that it was for sale. You know, you want to buy a used food container with the truck needed to move it? Yeah, that's a joke that is apparently circulating on Reddit. Let's go to the phone lines. Our good friend Dave from Huffman Estates is on the line. Hello, David. How are you?
Well, I'm not from Huffman Estates. I'm from out in San Francisco.
Oh, yeah. Lady B didn't hear me, but that's okay. We have two Daves on the line. So, David from San Francisco, we'll take you first. Go ahead.
Good deal. Yeah, it's good to hear the League of Davids is active today.
Davids are alive and well.
Sure. Yeah, I was, you were talking about what's his motivation? What's Trump's motivation? I'd look right away at Project 2025, and I used to study personal injury lawsuits. I did that for about 12 years. And so when I look at evidence of, say, like a great big polluter and how much damage they did in the first year, the second year, the 14th year, the 40th year, all of these types of pollution, they've got to get paid for. And that's Project 2025 for you. They come up with a political action committee to make sure they never have to pay for the damages they did for decades. And so that's Project 2025, and that's Trump's agenda. Mm-hmm. The guy is a slumlord. He's a slumlord, and he'll protect the other slumlords.
Yes, indeed. The guy is completely transactional. I don't know if I even talked about this. I saw an interview with a man who had been the ambassador to Panama when Trump was first elected, and he said he went to visit Trump in the White House to kind of just, touch base as an ambassador does. And he said Trump asked him, "Hey, what do we get from Panama?" Like that would be the only reason to have any kind of diplomatic relations with Panama, is because what do we get from them? Because it's a transaction. What do I get from you? What do you get from me? What's your cost? What's your price? What will it take to buy you? What will it take to buy me? And the guy who was the ambassador, who resigned shortly thereafter because he said he just didn't think he could work well with Trump, he said that he told Donald Trump, he said, "I knew that just speaking in diplomatic terms wasn't going to get me anywhere." So he said, I spoke to him like a New York cab driver. And he was like, "What do we get?" Well, you know how if you live on the East Coast and you want to buy the cheapest flat screen TV, the reason that flat screen TV is so cheap is because it comes through the Panama Canal. That's what we get. And he said, Donald Trump harumphed and said, who knew? Clearly not Donald Trump. What do we get from them? You're exactly right. It's all about the transactions.
Sure. Well, and when you start looking at the idea that when he swore into office, he puts his hand on the Bible, he puts his hand on the Constitution, and he swears to provide equal protection, equal justice under the law. And he's intentionally denying it. You're sitting in some terrible air right now, right? You're only because of the rains last night, it washed it out. But for the most part, you've been sitting in horrible air for a month? Mm-hmm. And he's refusing to send FEMA aid to any of these states. It took until, 2 days ago that he finally decided to give something to Washington State. And that's been going on for like 2 weeks. He's denied aid to North Carolina now for 2 years from that hurricane. And
because he's so vindictive, you understand his thought process to deny aid to blue or purple states. But he also, remember when Alabama had some flooding and he would not give any FEMA money. He would not allow any FEMA money to go to Alabama. And his buddy is the governor of Alabama. Remember his previous spokesperson? Yeah.
Was it Birmingham or was it a specific city? Because he's done the same in Oregon. Actually, today they've got like 5 or 7 fires going in Oregon, and he's only given for 2. And so, this idea, and it's not equal justice under the law, much less the idea of leaving a fire burn for like 2-3 weeks, leaving it burn just because he's a petty little, it's so impeachable. It's not equal justice. It's not equal protection in everybody. It's funny, I was looking at the air quality maps today, and they're still, from Washington State all the way down to Washington, D.C., there is bad smoke in Washington, D.C. And you can almost see the channel it's going through. I look at purpleair.com, and you can still see it to this hour, I believe, that the air quality in D.C. is still in the yellow and orange. And those guys, they're not putting out a fire. A friggin' fire that's keeping their own air in the hazard range. And, once it gets out of the yellow, you're orange and red. Yep. And so, it's 100 parts per million in some places in D.C., Baltimore, that region right there. And it's funny that this guy is that dumb and that petty that he wouldn't even clean up his own air.
Yeah.
So
I'm looking at my air quality index app, and it says it's moderate. The air is yellow, which is moderately bad in Los Angeles, but they have wildfires. But it is also actually, it's moderate in Washington, D.C., with a higher figure than in Los Angeles, where there are fires. You're absolutely right, David. Listen, I gotta move along. I'm trying to get in on number of callers. Well, let's continue our streak of Davids. Now let's go to Dave from Hoffman Estates. Hey, Dave.
Hey, Joan. Yeah, I was telling Lady B that today was 4 years ago when that Salman Rushdie got attacked up on that stage. So he knows a little thing or two about these Iranians with a grudge.
And how many years? There was a call for his assassination years and so many years earlier that security, he had relaxed security because everybody felt that, that was a long time ago. It's not going to happen. But all it takes is one person, one lone wolf. That's the scary thing about the world we live in today. You don't have to worry about a big mob coming for you. It's just the one crazy person who thinks that they're doing God's work.
Yeah, and that was almost 40 years ago.
Yeah.
That was when that other Ayatollah was there. Because he did that book, that Satanic Verses, remember? And then,
Yep.
And then this will drive the righties CEO to today's George Soros' 96th birthday.
And, when he passes, are they going to, I believe George Soros' son has become deeply involved in the family foundation. So maybe he'll be the next Republican target, the Republican boogeyman.
You mentioned about that young lady on the plane, I'm forgetting her name. Isn't she the same one that was carrying that diaper bag the other week? When
Natalie Harp. Yes. It is believed, it is speculated that, yes, she carries wipes and adult diapers. And part of the reason why that speculation exists, there was that guy whose name I always forget. The guy who he used to do Adderall with when he was doing The Apprentice. And that guy said that there was a guy on set who was sort of known as the wet wipe man. And when Donald Trump had an incontinence problem, the wet wipe man would help him out.
Wow.
Yep, the wet wipe man.
Yeah, and you mentioned on that Military Times that other following story, too, they were talking about where the Pentagon's trying to get them to rush a little bit more on, replenishing that stuff. And they said that for those Patriots, it takes roughly 42 months to do one, and then the THAAD missiles was like 53 months.
Yeah. But it's not Pete Hegseth's fault. No. It's Steven Feinberg's fault. It's his number 2. That's the guy who Donald Trump, if Donald Trump's going to fire anybody, it should be Feinberg, not Hegseth. That's what Hegseth says. He's just the head of the Defense Department. How did he know we were using up all of our munitions? I mean, come on. He's a big picture guy.
And so you get to the others. I heard on Miller's show this morning, they were talking about him where he wipes his nose or something, you don't see it, and he runs it through his hair. So he'd probably call that war fighters moves.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Let me get off so others want to say their piece.
Thanks so much, Dave, and thanks for waiting. This text came in every day when I wake up. I wonder what fresh hell dump will put us through. How can any veteran vote for him? Well, I think veterans have wised up, to be quite frank. I think that while there was initially a lot of support, for what I have been hearing through various channels is that the majority of the military really now hates this guy. And one last text before we go to break. Somebody texted in that I should stop sighing on the air because I sound like a bad wife. I am a bad wife. So the sighing is absolutely appropriate. I'm the baddest wife ever. We're going to take a break. We're going to be back with more after this.
WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter.
Want to join the conversation?
I'm going to say exactly what I think here.
Got something to say?
Everyone needs to hear what I got to say.
Call Joan now at 773-763-9278 and join the conversation. Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820.
I really appreciate the pictures you guys are sending on the text line. Greg from Lake in the Hills showed a picture of instead of a food container being lifted up to an aircraft, it is a giant, mega Kentucky Fried Chicken basket. Yep. Keep them coming. I'm enjoying them immensely. Let's go to Franklin Park where Al's on the line. Hey, Al, how are you?
I'm doing great, Joan. Well, I'm doing okay. How can you be doing great?
Yeah.
But, hey, it's 83 days today before the election. And once again, we got to all be about figuring out how to get the vote out. Like when your guests were on yesterday, I tried calling in a couple of times and didn't get in. But, we got to be paying attention to what the other side, well, not really. We know what the other side is doing to compete against them. Like they just change the rules every time that things don't work for them. And they're very good at we've had Russian interference. We've had Turning Point USA. We have, third-party candidates that have been spoilers. We've had voter apathy. We've had Christian nationalism, and some of the stuff exists in Illinois. Like we have something called the Belmont Bible Church and the In Grace Ministry, which are all part of the Salem News channel network. So I just like to hear more people calling in and talking about what they're doing to try to get the vote out and how everything that we're talking about today, the sentence should be, this is all interesting. Now, how do we use that to get the message out and make people realize how bad things are?
When
this is
we
great,
can get voters to turn out, we win. If we get voters to turn out, Democrats win. When voters stay home, Democrats lose. Al, thank you for that.
Exactly.
I really appreciate the call. I'm gonna try to get everybody in. So let's go to Steve from the Gold Coast, who is on the line. Hello, Steve.
Yeah, so a few points. So one, I mean, this is no different than Donald Trump, the Donald Trump that we've always known. I mean, he operates from the Roy Cohn playbook. Never admit that you're wrong. Always declare victory, no matter what, and just stick to it. And no matter how much the evidence says that you lost, just always declare victory. And you hope that enough idiots in America, and let's face it, there are low information voters, and in this realm in which they've done a pretty good job of discrediting credible journalism, that anybody who says anything different, immediately you're like, oh yes, they're part of that other side, those socialist, journalists and scholars and researchers. You can't believe them, so I'm just going to believe Trump. Okay, that's sort of a circular argument, but okay. I mean, this is where we are, and the whole notion of this aircraft, had to usher Donald Trump away while leaving all of these people unprotected. So if the threat was so great, why in heaven's name would you think that it would be all right to risk these other people's lives, many of whom are extremely important to the administration, credible journalists? I mean, assuming that the plane was shot down,
Steve,
what was going to...
People are making fun of him because of what he did, but if that plane had been attacked, if that plane had been damaged, if that plane would have had to make a crash landing, God forbid any of the people on board died. Can you imagine what a coward Donald Trump would be considered by, even by MAGAs, I think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there was a way to do this. It really wasn't that difficult. So you usher him away. It's a functioning airport. The plane takes off with Donald Trump secretly aboard, as what happened. And then a half hour, 45 minutes later, you declare that, oh, well, we actually can't take off here. There's a mechanical problem, whatnot. And then people, they'll make their way home by other means that the military and the government can provide. And everybody's fine. Everybody is safe. But no, instead, it's let's risk the lives of these very important people and give, by the way, terrorists a huge win should they shoot it down. Because if you shoot down a flight full of these kinds of people, I mean, it's a tremendous political victory, propaganda victory.
Yep.
But again, it was all about Donald Trump. Could you see this happening with Joe Biden or Obama or even George Bush?
The right-wing media would be on fire with what a coward he was. And, unfortunately, most of what I've seen, yes, I mean, they're telling the story, but it's more making it into a joke. That's the things that other people would be tanked for, their careers would be over. If with Donald Trump, it's like, oh, look at him. Yeah, that crazy Donald Trump. He's at it again. Ugh.
Oh, yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, under Barack Obama, if someone said, okay, this is what we're going to do, Mr. President, in order to ensure your safety, the first thing out of Barack's mouth would have been, okay, well, what is the plan with regard to everyone else on that plane?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So, I mean, before we save myself, what are we going to do about those people?
Yep.
And no, Trump says, no, hey, whoever life you need to risk in order to get me home safely, just go ahead and do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Steve, I got to move on. Thank you so much for the call. Let's take Ron, who's on the line from Chicago. Hello, Ron.
Hello, here's a comparison. When Biden was president, he went to the city of Kiev and he walked down the streets with Mr. Zelensky when bombs were falling. And now we have somebody who hides in a cardboard box.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And there was one time I was reading about this where Obama had to be kind of spirited away, but because it was felt by then. Actually, Pete Souza, the photographer for Obama, posted this, that Obama insisted that one journalist be sworn to secrecy and allowed to accompany him because they felt it was so important to have a record of what the president does.
Yeah, and I wonder what labor grade are 35-year-old bonds. I'd have to check on that.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, and also... when Trump had to switch planes and fly to England, he had to rough it. There was no changing table on the airplane.
Oh, God. Oh, Ron. Okay, thanks for the call and thanks for the laugh. Let's go to our good friend Paul on the line from Seattle. Hey, Paul, how are you?
Hi, Joan. Good. So Steve pretty well covered all the basics and stuff that we've all asked, is a better way to do this over the last 24 hours. But as I've been thinking about this, I thought, okay, so start with this question. Who was he hiding from? Because the inescapable conclusion is it could have only been the people remaining on the plane, because that's the only vantage that couldn't really see what was going on, which is the White House press corps who told to put your shades down, put your window shades down, which raises the question, because the thing to do, as Steve said, is you just say, oh, I'm sorry, folks, the flight's grounded for indefinitely for maintenance. But did they even tell the crew? Because
that's
if the crew didn't know,
that's a really interesting idea. I wonder now. The crew of Air Force One is military, so I don't know. Maybe they were informed. I'm not sure about that, but yeah, that's an interesting point.
So if they were, then the entire reason for this stowaway, tucked away in a Big Mac container, was to hide it from the White House press corps, because they're the only ones that couldn't see. As you pointed out yesterday, there was a video that seemed to show a truck going between the two planes, which also means that anybody on the outside of the aircraft, for instance, maybe an Iranian informant who would have a vantage, was able to see, or a spy drone was able to see. The best way to scuttle this whole plan was just to very publicly announce that the plane isn't going to fly, and just tell the press corps, maintenance, and the president, hey, folks, find your way home. President will meet you back in D.C. And then that's it. And that scuttles the whole plan, because unless the Iranians have a bead on that aircraft, a lock on that aircraft itself, which is really, really a dangerous question, then there's no reason just to say, shucks. We've all been through that. If you fly much, and I don't fly much at all, and I have been through a 2.5-hour delay for maintenance. So I think everybody has. That's something that's just that is so routine. Everybody knows how to deal with that. Okay, I got to go. Sorry, I'll scramble. You guys go. President will meet you back in D.C. And then the whole thing is that. But so they're all, and the White House aides, I understand now, got away in the truck, and they went with the president. So that made me think, well, what about
but not Stephen Miller? He left Stephen Miller on Air Force One, which I think is just amazing.
Yeah. I don't know. Too many questions. Too many questions.
I wonder, the press corps, from everything I've read, the press corps was really ticked off. I wonder how Stephen Miller felt when he realized that he had been left aboard the plane that people thought might be shot out of the sky. Ooh, if that isn't a this boss doesn't care about me moment, I don't know what is.
Well, if you've ever had, and maybe some of us have had, an experience in life where a friend did something where you said, you left me there knowing that, and that was the end of those kinds of friendships. And they go, oh, well, we knew you'd be okay. And it's like, I was okay, fine. Yeah, but what if I wasn't? And that I've had a couple experiences like that. A friend of mine was diving, and his buddies left him. And he said, they were lost in a ship, and they were direct diving. And he came up and said, where the F were you guys going? He goes, oh, we knew you had plenty of air. And we're like, oh, thanks, but I'm down there by myself, but I'm lost. And it was like, that's the end of those kinds of buddies.
Yeah, no, those are the kind of people that you drop from your friendship circle real fast. I can't think anything more terrifying than coming up from a dive and looking around and not knowing where the boat is. Oh, my God.
Yeah, it's just, that's kind of like the press corps must have felt, is that you left us there. And as people have corrected the language, not as decoys, as bait.
Yeah. And, one thing I didn't mention, a lot of the journalists complained to the White House press corps, which is supposed to be sort of their liaison with the White House. And the head of the White House press corps wrote a letter to the White House that I read. And the letter didn't say, hey, these people could have been killed. What are you doing? The letter was like, well, the White House press really needs to record everything the president does, and this prevented them from doing their job. And that's not what the journalists were upset about, though. Journalists were upset about that they were left to die. Anyway, that's
exactly.
And by the way, thanks for the texter who said it's Noel Kassler. You're absolutely right. Noel Kassler is the guy who was with Donald Trump on The Apprentice, and the guy who says they used to crush Adderall and snort it in the bathroom. The guy who said Donald Trump was incontinent for number 2 on a regular basis. The guy who said there was somebody on the set called the wipe man, the wet wipe man. So thank you for all of that. Thank you, Paul. We've got to take a break for news. We'll be back with more after this.
Remember Remember when you get to work to hop over to WCPT820.com or the TuneIn Radio app and stream The Stephanie Miller Show. Weekdays 8 to 11 a.m. on Chicago's Progressive Talk, where facts matter. This is WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Time for Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive.
Joan, as always, exceptional work from you from, your TV days all the way up to today. You're truly exceptional, and thanks for this great show you have.
It's time for Joan Esposito on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
I am so pleased to welcome a very, very tired Aaron Kleinman to our show. You can sign up for his newsletter, Radio Free America, at heartlandsignal.com. He is one of our senior political reporters, and he is the guy who watches all the elections and stays up as late as he needs to so we don't have to. And we thank him for his sacrifice. Aaron.
I am going to send my Starbucks bill directly to the Milwaukee County Clerk's office for damage inflicted on me.
So, you're saying Wisconsin kind of kept you up late last night?
Yeah, I don't know if everyone out there listening was watching MS Now, and Steve Kornacki had a bit of a breakdown when he found out that the Milwaukee County Clerk had left a few flash drives back at the polling places, and they had to go back and get them, and it was going to delay results for another hour because it was a very, very, very close statewide primary that we just went through in Wisconsin. David Crowley.
Wisconsin was just so incredible. I want to talk to you about how off the polls and the prediction markets were, because everybody was like, oh, Francesca Hong, she's sailing. One poll I saw, she was like 30 points ahead of her next opponent, which was David Crowley. And even though it was a bit of a barn burner, David Crowley won. I actually have some sound here where he talked about his win and the left versus center battle that's taking place in the Democratic Party. This is David Crowley on that. Listen to this.
Today, I stand before the people of Wisconsin after we rose from the ashes, after we rebuilt this campaign with purpose, and after people of Wisconsin decided that the bright future that working Wisconsin families deserve is worth fighting for. Today, I stand before you filled with gratitude, with humility, and hope as I formally accept the Democratic nomination to be the next governor of the great state of Wisconsin. You've heard a lot of people try to define this election as a battle between the left and the center, between progressives and the establishment, between insiders and outsiders. That narrative misses the entire point of what we're doing. Because when I traveled across Wisconsin, I didn't meet people who introduced themselves that way. I met parents wondering how they'll afford childcare. I met workers who want wages that keep up with the cost of living. I met farmers trying to preserve family traditions. I met small business owners trying to keep their doors open, and I met seniors who deserve security and dignity after a lifetime of work. I met young people who simply want a fair chance to build a life right here in this great state we call Wisconsin. We may not agree on every policy. We may not use the same labels, but we all want safe communities, strong schools, affordable health care, good paying jobs, and a brighter future for all of our children. And every one of us has something much bigger to unite around. And that is keeping MAGA extremism from bringing the chaos we see in Washington into our neighborhoods right here in the state of Wisconsin.
That is David Crowley talking about the left and center Democratic controversy, which I think is not as big a controversy as some people would like it to appear to be. Your thoughts, Aaron Kleinman?
Oh, I agree. There's so much more that the center liberal and left kind of wings of the Democratic Party have in common than what they don't. I think by and large, it's a coalition that's really unified by a lot of values around, personal freedom, fair markets, equality under law. These are all things that, these are actual values that the coalition has in common. Whereas, again, the opponents, MAGA, are mostly kind of, it's like a personality cult, basically. And so it can be a lot more unstable, though it is kind of unified by, kind of fear of the other, fear of kind of your neighbors, fear of pretty much everything. So, Crowley's absolutely right. And, one really interesting thing coming in from the election returns was that there wasn't a lot of geographic polarization in that primary.
Interesting. Explain that.
So Crowley, he's the county executive of Milwaukee County, which includes Milwaukee and its closest in suburbs. He barely carried Milwaukee County, and you would think that'd be a pretty bad sign for him.
Yeah.
But Francesca Hong, she only carried Dane County, home of Madison and kind of the surrounding areas, by about, I think it was about 7%, give or take. And so both of them really kind of underperformed what you'd think based on geography. And you kind of saw this statewide. Crowley, by and large, did best in kind of like small town Wisconsin. There's still a lot of Democratic votes in kind of small town Wisconsin. But Hong did particularly well in the Fox River Valley. And for those not familiar, that's kind of Green Bay, Appleton, down to Oshkosh, and kind of the northeast part of the state. That area Hong did pretty well. And she also did well in the parts of the state in the Minnesota media market. And that's kind of a theory that I have, is that anyone who is in the Minnesota media market has just been radicalized against the right very, very strongly. And I think Democrats will do pretty well in that part of Wisconsin, which is only about 10, 11% of the voters in the state. But, it's a state with very close elections, as we all know. So keep an eye on that.
That's really interesting to me. Because I always think of Wisconsin like my home state of Ohio, where the rural areas tend to be much farther, right? The smaller towns are much more likely to be pro-Trump than the larger urban areas. That geographic information is fascinating to me.
Yeah, and so, that is still the case in Wisconsin. For like the rural areas do tend to be more Republican, but it's not as kind of abject as it is in other states. You still have a pretty robust Democratic Party, even in rural areas. You have Democrats lose the rural areas there by like 20 points instead of like 30 or 40 points. And then similarly in Wisconsin, you kind of have historically Republicans' strongest part was the suburbs of Milwaukee, the WOW counties, Waukesha, Ozaukee, and Washington. And that's actually, they've been losing vote share there as they've been gaining vote share in rural areas. There's actually a decent chance that Ozaukee County, which is one of the bases of their vote, might actually go blue in the election this year. It's just been trending pretty far. It's been trending pretty Democratic. The city of Mequon, right above Milwaukee, has gotten pretty Democratic. So you have a lot of shifting coalitions there. And if you look at the election map, neither candidate really won a major blowout in either geography, which indicates to me, maybe there was some type of, ideological polarization, a little bit of it, but really it seems like the coalitions in Wisconsin were kind of not fitting neatly into how we think about political coalitions.
Years ago, I was talking with somebody involved in Democratic politics here in Illinois, and they said one of the things that Democrats did wrong was that they sort of abandoned rural areas. There used to be like a Democratic stronghold, or at least a Democratic presence, pretty much, rural or urban. And they said, looking back on it, I don't know whether it was considered not important or a cost-cutting move, but we kind of gave up those areas. And the person said, you can't drop into an area 6 weeks before an election and think that anybody is going to listen to you and follow you. But if you're there year round, that makes a difference. Do you think, is that the kind of structure there was in Wisconsin that led to this?
Well, I know that Ben Wickler, for example, he really focused on trying to stand up full-time activism, full-time Democratic Party who's been having a strong party in each county in the state. And, that probably helped keep some of those rural margins down, not as bad as they got in other states. And that really ended up, because Crowley did end up carrying those rural areas in the primary. So he probably benefited from that. If the Democratic Party in Wisconsin had seen the bottom fall out in rural areas like it had in other states, then Hong probably would have won.
Okay, I'm taking way too much time focusing on Wisconsin because we have a gajillion other states. That is an actual numerical term, a gajillion other states to look at. So where should we go from here? Oh, shoot. We should take a break from here. Radio professional, Aaron, you're in the hands of a radio professional. Aaron Kleinman and I are going to take a break. We're going to be back with more primary talk and other election results right after this.
You're listening to WCPT 820 because facts matter.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Go to heartlandsignal.com and sign up for Radio Free America. That is the newsletter that Aaron Kleinman puts out. He is the one who pays attention to all the races all the time and comes here to talk with us despite his lack of sleep. Okay, we talked about Wisconsin. Where do you want to go from here?
Well, I was out last week, but if you want to talk about Michigan, catch up on them. That was a big one, wasn't it?
Sure. Here's the interesting thing about Abdul El-Sayed. And I was, yesterday I was interviewing Peter Giangreco from the Strategy Group. By the way, David Crowley was one of their clients. And one of the things that he said, because he was talking about Sayed versus Hong, and he said that one thing Abdul El-Sayed had done was he had, sort of like early Graham Plattner, he was talking to people about the issues that mattered to them. He wasn't talking about arcane sort of socialist ideas or theory. It was groceries cost too much, gas costs too much, you're not getting the raises that you need to keep up with all this. That's what we've got to fix. And he thinks, he said that El-Sayed, because there's a lot of people who just want to take a broad brush to anybody who says they're a democratic socialist and paint them as some kind of radical. But he said that Abdul El-Sayed had a great message and was, if you're going to be a socialist, you've got to be able to have answers for people who push you and question you. And he seemed to do just that. What do you think?
Well, he actually said, I'm not a socialist. I'm a capitalist that understands capitalism and wants to fix it.
Well, the thing people don't really understand is being a democratic socialist doesn't mean you don't believe in capitalism. Most democratic socialists do believe in capitalism, but what that defines them, I think, is this idea that government should work for people. Government should make your life better, which is not a universal idea.
Yeah, and to his credit, El-Sayed, he had a very simple campaign message that he repeated nonstop, which is a great way to kind of, just get people to remember you. It was money in your pocket, money out of politics, Medicare for all. Regardless of what you think of like the merits, for example, of like Medicare for all, he kind of has a clear message and he's a very good messenger. He's very adept on his feet. And, he had a lot of money spent against him. But another big difference between him and Hong, who, again, either of them came within 1,000 votes of things going the other way, a few thousand votes. But he actually spent a lot of money on TV ads, not as much as it was spent against him. But he was on TV, and Hong did not go on TV.
Well,
and that could have been the difference.
From what I read this morning, and correct me if I'm wrong, that was a decision that was made by her campaign, that TV wasn't going to be a part of their effort to get the vote out.
Yeah. And I mean, well, TV, it's how you persuade people. And, the people that work on campaigns tend to be young. They tend to be more liberal than even the primary voting electorate. And sometimes they lose sight of the fact that there are still a lot of kind of older, perhaps more moderate people who still identify as Democrats and vote in Democratic primaries, and that still, watch linear television. And advertising on linear television is I think, anyone who watches football in the fall in a swing state really doesn't like it, but it is a very good way to reach a lot of people. It's expensive, but it's how you reach a lot of people. Hong opted not to do that. And I think looking at a loss by around 3,000 votes, she has to be wondering, was that a mistake? Because they really tried focusing on smart TV, and smart TV is a good way to reach younger voters. It is, definitely more cost effective in terms of, being able to target better, but you just don't reach a lot of voters when you do it that way. And so, it might not be what people want to hear. I know that people don't like the idea that so much money gets spent on television ads, but it's true. Francesca Hong should have spent money on TV.
I heard about an ad that El Sayed put out there. People were telling me what a great ad it was. It featured his grandparents. I found it. We actually have, it's a 30-second ad. Lady B, could you play the El Sayed ad for us?
Where did Abdul El Sayed come from?
Here.
We're his grandparents.
We helped raise him.
He became a doctor.
He always wanted to help people.
He got all those kids glasses.
Eliminated medical debt. Poof. He buys us groceries every week. He knows what things cost. He learned his Michigan values in our small town.
Take it from us.
We love him, and so will you.
Too much. I'm Abdul El Sayed, and I approve the heck out of this message.
Language.
I mean, it's charming.
That the political consultants, they'll always tell you, have adorable grandparents. It's an ace in the hole.
Yeah.
No,
and they are adorable.
Again, they are. I mean, and it showed, like they're going to spend, I would guess, 8 figures. I think when it's all said and done, they're going to spend 8 figures trying to other Abdul El Sayed. Mm-hmm. And they haven't the right has not shown any willingness to really kind of go after him on substance. It's all about, his name and his ethnicity. And what better way to neutralize that than with your adorable grandparents from Livingston County, Michigan?
Just to speak to that, yes, he's a Muslim and he's got a funny name. The ad where his grandparents are there, his grandparents are clearly 2 old, very, very white people. Do you think part of the message of that ad was white people don't be afraid of me because I have darker skin and a Muslim name?
Oh, absolutely. And, Barack Obama was able to pull it off. He did very well in the upper Midwest. Michigan is a state that has had, a pretty substantial Muslim community. It's a lot of immigrants from Arabic speaking countries for decades now. It's part of the culture there. I think, if you're not in Michigan, maybe you don't appreciate that as much. But, El Sayed is as Michigan as it gets. He played lacrosse for the University of Michigan. He's not parachuting in from somewhere else. Like, he grew up there. He was born there. He grew up there. He went to college there. He went back there to work for the city of Detroit, or I think it was actually maybe Wayne County, which is the home city of Detroit. Like, he's a Michigan guy. And so, again, we've talked about on your show before how voters like people who have ties to where they're trying to represent. Abdul El Sayed has, a very good story to tell about the ties to where he grew up. I think that if his name were Dan Smith, Republicans would be absolutely flummoxed right now because his biography, again, he just such an impressive guy. And so he moves so easily into any media space. That's a very difficult candidate to beat. And so all they have is trying to other him. And so he's just trying to neutralize that right now.
Interesting. Yeah, I think he did a really good job. I don't want to get into Minnesota because I think that's going to be a longer discussion. We only have a couple of minutes till the break. So what's one of the shorter state primaries we can talk about?
Well, my home state of Connecticut, my old boss, John Larson, I interned for him longer ago than I want to admit. He lost renomination to Luke Bronin, and people are wondering, what does this primary mean? And overall, there is kind of an anti-incumbent mood. Representative Larson is in his, pushing 80. He had a health incident a few years ago on TV, but he's still kind of sharp. But a lot of people just want until he knew. And then Luke Bronin, the guy who beat him, he was the mayor of Hartford. Being the mayor of Hartford is a very, very difficult job because in Connecticut, you get your finances of your city are tied to property taxes. And in Hartford, like a quarter of the property is not taxable because it's owned by the state. So it's always just kind of this fiscal basket case. He managed to do like a good job as mayor of the capital of the state and the biggest city in the district. And it just made it so that he was probably like, he even though Larson was a congressman, Bronin was probably before the election the most popular politician in the district. And so it was, I wouldn't read too much into this. This was just Bronin really saw a shot and he did not have to break too much of a sweat to be an incumbent congressman. And so Larson is the fifth incoming congressman to lose a primary, not counting seats where there was redistricting. So that was the...
It's impossible to do this, but I'm going to ask you anyway, because I have faith in you. How much of a factor was John Larson's age, do you think?
It was. I mean, it was. I was in a focus group with two first district Democratic primary voters last week. My parents, and they're both over 70. I won't embarrass my mom by saying exactly what, but they're both over 70, and they were just like, you know what? We've known John Larson. He's been our congressman for decades. You interned for him when you were in college, not that long ago. But we just thought it was time for something new. And these aren't, again, they're younger than John Larson, but older than Luke Bronin. And they still, they were pretty implacably in Bronin's camp. I tried to get them over to my old boss. Didn't work. They just wanted something new.
It does seem like what we are coming up against is a change election where a lot of people may not be in love with the candidate they vote for, but they just want somebody new, somebody who will do things differently. I'm joined by Aaron Kleinman, and he is the senior political reporter for Heartland Signal. We'll be back with more after a break.
This is Chicago's Progressive Talk, 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and online at WCPT820.com, where facts matter.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
I am lucky enough to be joined by Aaron Kleinman. His newsletter is one you should sign up for. Radio Free America. You can sign up for it by going to heartlandsignal.com. He is our senior political guy. Can we go to Minnesota now? I'm very excited about Minnesota.
Let's talk Minnesota. They're much better at counting votes there than Wisconsin.
I'm so sorry Wisconsin kept you up late. But, dude, this is what you live for.
It is. I wouldn't have it any other way.
So, Peggy Flanagan, what do you think?
That I was shocked that the polls had it as close as they did in that. Though Flanagan's internal polls, which she released, showed that she would win by about 20 points, and that's what she did. I mean, I thought that the lesson here was that there were just a lot of people that read that period from like the 2024 election to like the middle of 2025. Some people thought that was kind of an epical change in American politics that they had to respond to, as opposed to just overall kind of dissatisfaction with the status quo and a bad information environment that wasn't necessarily a permanent thing. And Angie Craig kind of, showed that maybe she didn't have the spine that Democratic primary voters want when, she voted for the Lake and Riley Act. She voted to thank ICE, and then ICE comes to town, and Minnesota just is revolted by it. And she was running, she had totally misread the moment, and she paid the price because Peggy Flanagan kind of mopped the floor in that primary. And now she's the favorite to be the next senator from Minnesota. And, as a longtime bleeding heart liberal, the first politician I ever thought, wow, that guy knows what's up. That guy is someone that I would absolutely love to support. It was Paul Wellstone. This is Paul Wellstone's seat.
I remember him. He was amazing.
He was. And again, we lost him very tragically in a plane accident. And this was his seat that she's running to be in, and I am just so happy for the people of Minnesota, because it's I think she went to like the Wellstone people, the people who worked for him. They basically started training candidates. That's why you actually got a lot of good candidates in Minnesota, because they know what they're doing. And I think so. She worked for them. I think my hope is that she's ready to carry on his legacy. So I'm just happy for everyone. And I'm happy for Peggy Flanagan. And now it's time to go into November, and it's time to, let's hope you can beat Michelle Tafoya by as much as you beat Angie Craig by.
Well, I'm not going to play it because it's a little bit long, but Peggy was talking about Michelle Tafoya to her crowd, and it's the differences are clear. This is not a race where the two candidates are really similar, so you got to figure out which one is a little bit better on the issues you like. This is a race where the candidates are very, very, very different. I mean, Michelle Tafoya is Trump all the way. And I think that's, at least from this speech that I saw, that's going to be one of Peggy Flanagan's talking points. Yes to Trump on this, yes to Trump on that, yes to Trump on this. I think that could be effective in this race.
Oh yeah, I mean, we have the polls. You and I both seen him. His approvals right now are like 32%. Now, I don't think that everyone who disapproves of him is going to vote for a Democrat, but I don't see who is shifting over from having voted for a Democrat to voting for a Republican. That just doesn't seem feasible to me. And Minnesota's a state where you don't have to win over a single Trump voter in order to win statewide. Trump never carried the state. Republicans haven't won a statewide election there in 20 years. And so, Peggy Flanagan starts this race off in a very strong position against Michelle Tafoya. Even though, Michelle Tafoya has name rec from her time on Monday Night Football. She's trying to position herself as a moderate and saying that she's pro-choice. But, this is just, it's going to be very tough for her for Tafoya to, who are the Democrats that are going to vote for a Republican in 2026?
Yeah, really.
I don't know.
One thing I talked to Peter Giangreco about, because it's always ticked me off, because before I was a radio host, I spent a lot of years as a journalist, and it always bothered me. I mean, we would see all this polling, New York Times polling, Ipsos polling, and it would give you some numbers, Nate Silver, and then it would turn out that the results were different. But it always seemed like the candidates had polling that was much more realistic. They would know that they were going to lose an election, even if the rest of us didn't. And I asked Peter about that, and he said, candidates, and you probably already know this, but maybe the audience doesn't, candidates do a different kind of polling. It's much, much, much more expensive to do, and it is much, much, much more precise. Instead of just saying, oh, we're gonna do some polling in Wisconsin. No, for a candidate, they'll say, we want to see what a white woman over 60 feels about our candidate, and they dig and dig and dig until they find the person that fits the age and the demographics and the geography of what they're looking for. So he said, yes, the polling that candidates do is a lot more accurate.
Yeah, well, it's more expensive. Yeah, like you said, they're going to spend more money on it because they need to get high quality respondents in order to model the electorate well. They also, candidates, when they poll, they're not polling just to see what the numbers are. They know that they have to win. And it's more, they poll to try to figure out what messages might resonate with people. And so that it's not kind of like a 5-minute poll. You might be talking to people for 20 minutes, and that's just, it costs more to do that. But more to the point, I think, we've seen kind of what was wrong with the polls. The polls missed. And the issue in a primary in particular is it's just very hard to model a primary electorate. Wisconsin had massive turnout, way more than before. Actually, a fun Michigan fact, Abdul El Sayed, going back to Michigan, he ran for governor in 2018. He lost to Gretchen Whitmer in the primary. If he had gotten as many votes as in 2018 as he did in the 2026 Senate primary, he would have beaten her 2-1. Like, there was just a huge increase in turnout. And unlike with partisan elections where you kind of have benchmarks of kind of, who's turning out where, and you can model the electorate based on those assumptions, it's a lot harder to model a primary electorate. So the likelihood of a polling miss is just a lot higher in a primary. And then on top of that, we're talking about Wisconsin, there's no party registration. You have a very homogenous state, a lot of kind of white voters, not a lot of people kind of, in small towns, like I said, more than you might think. And then so it's difficult to model. And another thing in Wisconsin is the polls might have been right, because the polls were taken about 2 weeks ago showing Hong up big. And in those 2 weeks, she just had a terrible news cycle where all of her past comments, possibly disqualifying her as, a potential general election candidate, came up. She didn't really have a great response on them, at least until kind of toward the end. And then, we think about our friends to the north. First of all, I apologize for my coworkers driving in Wisconsin. I know you don't like the FIDs. But since the Scott Walker election in 2010, they've been through a lot there. And in 2026, this is their first chance in decades to have a Democratic trifecta and undo all of that, undo Act 10, undo all the right-wing kind of experiments that have just been disasters. And they don't want to blow it. And so there's just a lot of risk aversion there. And I think that kind of came through at the end. And that's why you saw people consolidate around Crowley at the end. And also, again, it was a very hectic election. The Tony Evers, the incumbent governor, his preferred candidate was originally his lieutenant governor, Sarah Rodriguez. She dropped out because of a campaign finance scandal. Crowley had dropped out kind of when he knew that Evers wasn't going to get Evers backing. He jumped back in. Mandela Barnes, who was Evers' first lieutenant governor and had run for Senate and nearly won, he stayed in the race, but then we found out that there had been allegations against him, just around kind of, nothing illegal, but, maybe unseemly relationships with women in the Democratic Party. So then he drops out. And then and it was just a very chaotic election, and that can be very difficult to poll. And so add all those things together, and it's like, yeah, of course there's a polling because Wisconsin, this was like an impossible race to poll. So polls can still be instructive, especially in a general election. But I think we saw here, and you mentioned betting markets too. They don't capture they're a useful tool, but especially in a primary, you need to build in that uncertainty around there being some type of category error, around there being some type of thing that they're missing with the electorate. And similarly with prediction markets, there's just way too much confidence in those. They had Francesca Hong is like a 95% favorite heading into this. When anyone in politics knows that there's a pretty high likelihood of a category error in polling. It's been a very hectic race, and it just kind of there's this false. And then you watch prediction markets go up and down all night as the election returns go in. If it were like the mean prediction market, I would have had them bouncing between like 40 and 60% for most of the night until Crowley finally started getting like a lot of good rural returns in at like 12:30 a.m. So there's just a lot of false confidence in polls and prediction markets. It's not that they're totally useless, though prediction markets kind of are. But you kind of need to remember that they are imperfect measures, and that, don't, if they're not matching up to what you think is going on, it's like, they shouldn't be asking you to not believe your lying eyes,
I need to drag you back to Minnesota for a few minutes, because Mike Lindell refuses to concede the fact that he did not get the Republican nomination that clearly has gone to Lisa DeMuth. My favorite thing was the reporter asking him when he was going to concede, and if the AP calls the race, and he's like, AP, like who's AP? Like all I care about is the voters. And he still, as of this moment, has not conceded that he lost. Oh,
Hey,
my
sure,
goodness.
that doesn't sound like him.
Mike, I told somebody yesterday he should have given out more pillows. You get a pillow, and you get a pillow, and you get a pillow, as long as you vote for me.
Yeah, the Republican nominee probably wasn't going to matter very much. Amy Klobuchar is the Democratic nominee, and she is just, an electoral behemoth in Minnesota. And so, Lisa DeMuth has a pretty small chance. But, I think Republicans in the state are thinking, well, at least you won't humiliate us like Lindell would. So there are plenty of Minnesota Republicans just as humiliating as Mike Lindell. There's this one guy, he holds on to, it's a purple seat outside Duluth. His name is Jeff Dotseth. Look at, there have been all of these crazy allegations against him. He is, things like abuse. He's a crazy anti-vaxxer. Just like Jeff, Dotseth. I don't want to say anything more than that because I forget the exact things, and I don't want to get some of the total insanity emanating from him wrong. But Mike Lindell, there's a reason why he came in second. There are a lot of Minnesota Republicans like him, and so it'll probably be a bad year for Republicans in Minnesota in 2026. But hopefully that sweeps out all the Mike Lindells that they have in their party, because there are a lot.
Aaron, we need to take a break, but when we come back, I've got a short clip from Amy Klobuchar. And the more I think about what she said in her acceptance, I have some questions, and I need you to tell me whether or not you think I'm off base. Aaron Kleinman and I are going to discuss more primary results right after this.
Alexa, play WCPT.
WCPT from TuneIn.
Hey, the last commercial break, you heard Patty Vasquez talking about this new show at the Paramount Theater. Well, if you're the second caller to Lady B, I'm going to give you a couple of tickets to see Mean Girls at the Paramount Theater in downtown Aurora. It is a funny musical, and I've been told there's a lot of pink in it. From August 26th to October 11th, the hit Broadway play based on Tina Fey's film Mean Girls is at Paramount Theater. You need to be the second caller, 773-763-9278, and you will walk away with a free pair of tickets. A story, as you heard Patty say, about a young woman, Katie Heron, who moves from Africa to Illinois and enters the wild world of high school. Tina Fey supposedly, it's based Mean Girls on New Trier High School, which is where both my kids went, which is just a nice little aside. It is a perfect show for anyone who's ever tried to find their place in the crowd. If you want to just buy tickets, go to ParamountAurora.com. Our contests here on WCPT 820 are open to you as long as you're at least 18 years old. Live in the greater Chicagoland, Northwest Indiana area, one entry per person, one winner per household, void where prohibited by law. Listeners may only win or qualify to win once every 30 days. Complete rules are on our website at WCPT820.com. Click on the contest tab.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Joining me is Aaron Kleinman. Go to heartlandsignal.com and sign up for his newsletter. It comes out once a week, Radio Free America. And he talks about a lot of the stories that a lot of times national media doesn't pick up. So it isn't just going to be more of the same. It is going to be delightfully different. And I know Lady B is busy taking down the information for our contest winner. But, I always do this. I ask Lady B to do 10 things at once. So, Lady B, if you can hear me, play that Amy Klobuchar sound we've got.
In Minnesota, trust is not given. It's earned. That trust comes with an expectation, which is results. Results that you can see and feel in your life. Results in making life more affordable, making our government work, and getting rid of the fraud. Results in expanding our economy with a growth agenda, results that will transform our government. And yes, I will be a transformative governor.
Okay, Aaron, trust. I will be transformative, which means that I will evolve this government into something new. You got to have a government you can trust and the one that you can count on not to have any fraud. Do you think that's... I understand that there's a big fraud scandal in the state, but does that feel like a rebuke to Tim Walz?
It is, but also, like you said earlier, it's a change election, and I don't think that you can run on more of the same. I think, it's not a disrespect to him necessarily, though. Anyone who's kind of a statewide elected in any state, you're going to have a big ego, and just like not everyone's going to get along. I think there aren't many states where everyone really gets along, so there's probably some rivalry between him and Klobuchar. But, she needs to run as a bit of a change agent. And, we have polling that actually shows that in spite of Trump's wild corruption, Republicans or Democrats don't really have that much of an advantage on things like tackling waste, fraud, and abuse. And I think it's actually smart of Democrats to say, yeah, we want a government that works well. We want a government that is free of waste, fraud, and abuse. The things that went on in Minnesota, that is embarrassing that happened, and they should have had better oversight. The answer isn't, kind of the Republican burn it all down Doge approach that ends up making things worse because you end up having to outsource even more critical government functions. It's, a Democrat program of, all right, let's see, how do we build the state capacity here? How do we build a government so that it's effective and it delivers for people? And it's an important thing for Democrats to consider as they try to get out of the wilderness. And if you want to win the White House back in 2028, Trump took a sledgehammer to so much stuff. How do you build back a competent government again? And so I think it's good that Klobuchar is willing to talk about that and, going to try to govern accordingly.
Another race, another state that I want to drag you to is South Carolina, where, Darlene Graham, actually, she used to have a third last name, but now she seems to be dropping that. I think, she doesn't want anything to get in the way of her association with her brother, Lindsey Graham. So now she's just apparently Darlene Graham. She decided that she not only was going to fill out the rest of Lindsey's term, she was going to run for the seat. And she did very well in the primary. She and Ralph Norman are going to be in a runoff election. Now, there were a couple of other people in the race, and who knows where their votes are going to go. So the fact that Darlene Graham beat Mr. Norman in this early primary, or in this early race, I don't think carries quite as much weight as it otherwise would. What do you think is going to happen here?
It's a very bizarre election because it's on such a kind of breakneck timetable where, we're going to, Lindsey Graham dies, I think it was a month ago. And then, they're having a primary to replace him now. And then a few weeks later, there's a runoff. And then in November, that's the election. So it's a very truncated thing. And it's almost unprecedented. So it's hard to say whether Graham or Norman will come out on top. But I think either is good news for Annie Andrews, who I think we've had on the channel on WCPT before, who's going to be the Democratic nominee. And, Graham, and she's an unknown. We don't know how good of a politician she is. We don't, and, maybe people don't really like the whole kind of nepotism aspect to it, though in politics, we do kind of like Nepo babies sometimes. Just ask the Kennedys, it worked for them for a long time. But, again, she's pretty untested as a candidate. And then Norman is, the farthest of the far right, Freedom Caucus guy, once pulled a gun on a constituent. Yeah, he is. And so, again, a Democrat hasn't won a South Carolina U.S. Senate seat since 1998 when Fritz Hollings won his final term. But, we're looking at the most unpopular Republican presidents, since 1998, basically. I mean, unless you want to count George W. Bush at the very end after the economy collapsed. So,
who do you think would be easier for Annie Andrews to beat?
Probably, I know how bad Norman is. I don't know how bad Graham could get.
I
That's
saw
what
an
I'll say about
interview
it.
with a reporter did with a woman from South Carolina who said she was going to vote for Darlene Graham and actually talked about the fact that she didn't have any political experience as a plus. You know, I
Hey, you
like
never
that
know.
I like that she's just, she's brand new. She doesn't, she's not involved in it, doesn't know anything about it. It's sort of like implying that would bring a fresh perspective.
The mind of the voter never ceases to amaze me. People are capable of so many different thoughts on so many different topics, and she's not like totally unqualified for it. She ran, I think, a state agency, which shows that she has facility with policy. She has facility with being a public figure. So she's not a total neophyte. They didn't pluck her from working at a bowling alley or something. But she has shown so far that she's very kind of wary around the press. So that's why I'm kind of wondering, like, is she going to be kind of a dud of a candidate? But in South Carolina, to win 50.1% of the vote in South Carolina in a general election as a Republican isn't terribly difficult. So she can probably just kind of quietly, do a very low key general election campaign. She can still probably win. But again, with the headwinds at the top of the ticket, and also, we saw in Tennessee, for example, last week, black voters are particularly fired up because after the gutting of the VRA, I think they are rightfully mad about that, and the wave of basically voter suppression through gerrymandering that has gone through the South. So watch out for that too. And then you have in South Carolina, people moving to the coastal part of the state from the north. You have growing cities like Greenville and Spartanburg that were formerly pretty religious and conservative, but maybe are loosening up a little bit. So it's still unlikely a Democrat wins there, but you can kind of see a path emerging.
Well, you're right. And Darlene would not be the first family member to take over an elected seat, though I was really enjoying the jokes after she was named to be the senator. Things like, my brother's a brain surgeon, and if he ever dies, I'll be expecting a call from the hospital to show up right away. And all these other people commenting on all these other professions that, if my sibling does this, and if anything happens to her, I'm expecting to, take over this job. And when you put it in light of other professions, it really is absurd. But, we see it in politics that somebody's daughter, somebody's wife, it's happened before. It could happen again.
Yeah. And I tend to take a capacious view toward who's qualified to be in office. Ultimately, it's up to the public. She did get a very unfair leg up, and the public can always decide that was too unfair and they don't like it. But, I think anyone can be a senator if the public's willing to vote for them, even if they did work at a bowling alley. If you work at a bowling alley and you can persuade 50% of the people that you should be a senator, then that's what makes you qualified. So more power to you.
And, you mentioned that she doesn't seem real comfortable with the press, but playing devil's advocate, couldn't that almost be a plus? Because if somebody doesn't tell you where they stand on all the issues, sometimes people project, because that issue hasn't been addressed. Well, they must feel the way I feel because they don't know any different and the candidate hasn't said any different.
It can be. I think for her, probably it helps just because she's kind of coasting off the memory of her brother who, had done relatively well as a South Carolina politician. So maybe, it doesn't work for every candidate. People do want to see some kind of, some type of indication that you care about something, that you care about public service, that you have opinions on things. We've talked a lot about authenticity before. Having actual, opinions on things is part of authenticity. So yeah, she's kind of in a unique situation because of the circumstances of this election. But I it might work for her, but it probably would make sense for her to, talk about what her actual agenda is.
Yeah.
And again, it's South Carolina, so just being like, I support, the Republican agenda. That's usually enough to win there. It's been enough to win there for decades.
Yeah. Aaron Kleinman writes a newsletter. You can sign up for it to get it in your email box once a week, Radio Free America. Go to heartlandsignal.com. He is our senior political reporter. Thank you, Aaron. Always a pleasure to chat.
Oh, thanks for having me. Now I'm going to go take a nap.
Yes, you've earned it. We are going to take a break for news. We'll be back with more after this.
The Thom Hartmann radio program provides all of the intelligence, information, and insight you'll need to win the water cooler wars. Weekdays 11 to 2 right here on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk, where facts matter. Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive.
Quite frankly, I get most of my news from you.
Joan Esposito.
Y'all ready for this?
On WCPT 820.
Joe Walsh was once a congressman from the state of Illinois. He was a Tea Party guy who could not stomach Donald Trump, lost his conservative radio show because of that. And for a while, he was lost in the wilderness. But then he found his way to the Democratic Party, albeit perhaps a little reluctantly. I've periodically sat down with Mr. Walsh, and the conversations are always lively and fun. Joe, how are you?
Joan, I adore you. You are my favorite radio talker ever.
Well, that goes without saying.
That's
really?
A given. That's a given. Now, one point of not clarification, but I may be back in the wilderness soon. I don't know how long I'll be a Democrat, but I'll always be arm in arm with you, helping to defeat Republicans, no matter what.
So, do you think you will wander back to being an independent?
I think I'm destined, Joan, to be a political independent probably for the rest of my life.
Lost in the wilderness, Joe Walsh.
Lost in the wilderness. I've been a Democrat for 436 days.
But who's counting?
But who's counting? And because you and I have talked plenty, I did not become a Democrat because of policy. I'm not where most Democrats are on policy. I became a Democrat because I wanted to help Democrats learn how to fight, and I wanted to defend democracy and the rule of law. And I think to a large degree, Democrats now understand it, and they are fighting. And so now I think Democrats now are going to have the long overdue conversation. Okay, we know Trump sucks, but who are we, and what are we as a party, and what do we stand for?
Mm-hmm.
And truthfully, who am I, Mr. Tea Party, to say that I belong in that conversation? I don't think I do, but we'll see.
Well, as a matter of fact, when I don't know, I must have mentioned a week or so ago that I hadn't talked to you in a while, and I was hoping to get you back on. And I got a couple of texts from people here in Illinois who remember you from your Tea Party days. And I was instructed to ask you two questions. Okay, Joe, who won the presidential election in 2020?
Joan, it's amazing that somebody is asking me that question. That's someone who has not paid attention the last 5 or 6 years. Joe Biden won fair and square in 2020.
And the second question is one listener said, well, he used to say all kinds of bad things about Hillary Clinton. You should get him, find out how he feels about Hillary Clinton right now. So, Mr. Walsh, what do you have to say about the Hillary Clinton of today?
I wish Hillary Clinton were president right now. One of my biggest regrets, Joan, is that I voted for Trump in 2016. If I could take that vote back, I would in a heartbeat. And I'll do you one better. I know the Democrats need to find a nominee in 2028, and I think the process could be crazy. Call me crazy. I'd love to see Hillary Clinton run for president in 2028. So
really? See, yes. Joe, you've got, maybe you've got a wider perspective on this. In 2028, and it crushes my heart to say this, I do not want to see on the Democratic ballot. I don't want to see a woman.
Say it.
I don't want to see a woman, and I don't want to see a gay man. I think we have to go. We've got to find some straight white guys who are palatable to everybody. I really believe that. I think there is so much misogyny in this country that it isn't even able to be accurately measured. And we need the White House in 2028. And I don't want to see us take any chances. Yes, Gretchen Whitmer is delightful. So is Hillary. So are a bunch of other women who would make great presidents. But are they electable? I don't know. I'm terrified when I see reporters go to communities that have been sort of Trump supporting or Trump leaning. And the guy will say, well, you know, I just don't think a woman can be president. And then they put the microphone in the face of his wife and she goes, oh, I agree. I don't think a woman should be president. And it just, until we can get rid of that, I'm sorry, I want to win. I want to win. So no. And I can't, I'm not going to live long enough to see a woman in the White House. And that really
Joan
makes me sad.
You're first of all, you're 26 years old, so I don't want to hear that talk. Secondly, as a straight white male, that's me. I wish I could. I know I had a talk radio show for a long time, so I can't say the words I want to say right now. But I strenuously disagree with you. I think if the Democrats put up a fighting woman, a tough fighting chick who understood how regular Americans think and live, I think a real tough woman could easily win the nomination and get elected as president. So I'm not afraid of a female candidate. I don't know who that is right now, but I don't think that we should throw that gauntlet down.
Okay, I will keep that door open, but not in 2028.
Oh my gosh,
I'm sorry. I don't even want a woman on the ticket as the vice president. That's how terrified I am of. I think Donald Trump will be dead by then, but you know, unless the Republican candidate is really, really weak, I don't want to take any chances. And frankly, even if the Republican candidate is weak, I don't want to take any chances.
I don't care, white, black, brown, gay, straight, transgender, male, female. Democrats need like real people. They need real fighting people to run for president. And I don't know who that is, Joan. It doesn't matter to me, the sex or the color. I agree that there's still misogyny in this country. There's sexism in this country and all the rest, because I hear it every day. But a lot of that, I think a strong, in-your-face woman could overcome all of that.
Joe, why is it so hard for people to believe that you have made a change in your ideas and your allegiances?
Well, let me put it to you like this, Joan. Imagine a world where AOC, you love her, we love her, I love her, AOC became so disgusted with the Democratic Party, believe that the guy who's the leader of the Democratic Party is a fascist, is everything our founders feared. So AOC up and left the Democratic Party. She did everything she could do to help defeat Democrats because of who the Democratic Party became. And then she became so disgusted that AOC became a Republican to help defeat Democrats. Nay, she would support Ted Cruz, whoever's running for president, to make sure we defeat that fascist leader of the Democratic Party. Now, all of what I just said to you, most people couldn't fathom. That, Joan, that's what I did. Mm-hmm. I was Mr. Far-Right Tea Party who made that entire journey in about 8 or 9 years. I get it that people find it hard to believe, but let me tell you something, and I know you know this. It's been pure hell, and I've lost everything. I mean, everything. And I didn't do it for the money because there's no money in what I'm doing. But I get it that people don't believe it because almost the journey sounds impossible, like AOC's journey like that would be.
What do you think of John Ossoff? I frankly wasn't paying a whole lot of attention to him, but more and more I'm starting to hear these rumblings that he might have, he's a good speaker, he's young enough but not too young, and certainly Donald Trump has a real burr under his saddle about Ossoff. Do you think that's because he sees Ossoff's potential as a candidate for a higher office?
I would just say this. I think Ossoff is impressive. He's young, but let's all slow our roll. Not you, Joan, but he's got to get reelected in November, and it looks like he's got a great chance to get reelected. But we can't just fall in love with the first, potential guy or gal that comes around. If Ossoff gets reelected in November, he'll immediately be put on that list. But then he's going to have to prove himself. He's utterly untested at the presidential level. We don't know the first thing really about him. But there's potential there. I agree with that.
I want to talk to you. We need to take a break, but I want to talk to you about what you see as the way the midterms will happen in this country. I'm talking to Joe Walsh. We are going to take a break. We're going to be back with more after this.
Because facts matter. You are listening to WCPT 820.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, sorry. Got to do this. I'm Joan Esposito, in case you've forgotten. And I want to tell you about 120 Life. 120 Life is a drink made with ingredients that help support healthy blood pressure. My mom had blood pressure problems much of her adult life, took medicine, and for many of us, high blood pressure runs in the family. 120 Life is a great-tasting fruit and vegetable drink designed to improve your blood pressure. Put it to the test for a couple of weeks, check your blood pressure, see if it works for you. Some people reported results in as little as 2 weeks. And if you like a fruit drink that isn't too sugary, 120 Life is also for you. To try it, go online to 120life.com. That's 120life.com. If your high blood pressure doesn't come down in 2 weeks, you can get a full refund. And you can get a 20% discount on your order. Use the code JOAN, JOAN, for 20% off. These statements have not been approved by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
With me is former Illinois Congressman Joe Walsh. Before we went to the break, I was talking about the midterms. Everybody seems to be pretty much agreed upon the fact that Donald Trump will try one or more things to disrupt or interfere or negate the midterm elections. What do you think is the most likely scenario we'll see, Joe?
I think what we heard 2 days ago, I think that traitor, and he's a traitor to this country, and even canceled the midterms. Joan, the 9/11 Commission, remember famously a year after that terrorist attack, in their report, they said it was a failure of imagination. We just couldn't imagine terrorists would fly planes into buildings. We've had a failure of imagination in this country ever since Trump first got elected. We just can't believe he'll do the things he'll do. He tried to overthrow an American election 6 years ago. We need to believe right now that he will do anything to screw with and try to cancel and really mess up this midterm election. He's our country's enemy. I mean, Joan, if you declare war on our elections, you're an enemy of this country. So we need to prepare for anything.
I've talked to some people who say that part of his trying to negate the results, saying that they were interfered with, or somebody in Venezuela admitted to him that they hacked the voting machines or something. We have to prevent what happened in Georgia, where the FBI showed up and walked away with boxes of voting materials. I don't know how we prevent that unless we preemptively put either local cops or state police or the National Guard at places where the State Board of Elections is counting ballots.
Joan, you said the word. You said the word. And again, I can't say this other word on the radio. Preempt the you-know-what. Democrats need to preempt him. It's like we know Trump is going to rob a bank in a few months. He's been plotting for a year now, talking with others, putting his people in place to rob the bank. So why aren't Democrats preempting him? They should be yelling and screaming about this. They should be trying to arrest him now, take him to court now, contest everything now that he's trying to do. Bring attention to what he's trying to do now. Don't wait until he does it.
Well, it's interesting because a week or so ago, I read this sort of mysterious report that in one of the states was having a primary, there were people from the DOJ, groups of 2 and 3, dressed in plain clothes, no uniforms of any kind, that showed up at polling places and just kind of walked around, was like looking at things. And when we had the primary yesterday, they did that again. I believe it was in Minnesota, and they weren't allowed inside. They were allowed within 100 feet at the door, but they weren't allowed to come any closer, and they weren't allowed inside. So maybe we are learning slowly but surely how to resist.
He has his loyalists in place, FBI, DHS, and now he's got his attorney general. So he's got his people in place to do what he's going to try to do. And I just, Joan, after like January 6th, I have no patience for people, Democrats or anybody, who roll their eyes when I tell them that Donald Trump will try to cancel the midterms if he can. Maybe that's crazy talk, but we got to believe it. Anything is possible after January 6th.
Jim Himes, the Congressman Jim Himes, said that he thinks the most likely scenario is whatever shenanigans he does ahead of time may not have much of an effect. Even if ICE shows up, we're kind of ready for that. But he thinks that if it appears, as seems likely now, that the Democrats are definitely going to retake the House. There looks like maybe they're going to come after the Senate. John Ossoff gets reelected. That is when Trump is going to make this announcement that Maduro's brother or somebody from Venezuela has let it be known that they hacked our elections. Therefore, this election is completely invalid. Jim Himes said, I think that's the way he's going to go. What do you think about that?
I think it's both. I know he has a plan for the 3 months before the midterms. I know he has a plan for the week or two before the midterms. I know he has a plan on Election Day, and I know he has a post-Election Day plan. So I think it's all the above. And look, ICE, these masked fascist federal thugs at polling places, that will impact people. There will be people too intimidated to vote. Our brown and black neighbors. It's like a 200-point plan that he's got. Himes is right, but it's everything. And think about this, Joan. We know no matter what, he won't accept the results of the election. I mean, how sad is that? Our own president, once again, will not accept the results. We know that's going to happen. And I'll give you one more. If it is at all close in the House or the Senate, don't you dare tell me that Mike Johnson or John Thune will relinquish power. If Democrats take back the House by 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 seats, there's no way on God's green earth that Mike Johnson and Donald Trump allow the new Congress to be sat. I'm telling you.
Even if he resists for a while, he can't resist forever.
I don't say can't anymore, Joan. I don't. Not after the 2020 election. Not after January 6th. If Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do that one thing, this would be a whole different world right now. So I no longer say he can't.
You know how government works. You've been there. Yeah. Let's say Joe Biden dies. Donald Trump can't prevent his body from lying in state, can he?
Joan, that's a great question. I want to believe that the Biden family has already codified their plan And I would imagine the Biden family wants Donald Trump nowhere near.
That I agree with. I don't think he'll be invited to the funeral or certainly not asked to deliver a eulogy. But the coffin lying in the rotunda, that's got to be a given, right?
Well, it should be, but I bet I would be willing to bet, because this is so unprecedented having Trump in the White House, that Democratic officials and the Biden family have already dictated how and why and when Biden's body would lie in state, having nothing to do with whatever Trump says.
God, I hope so. I hope so.
Yep.
Hey, what is Paxis? P-A-X-I-S.
Oh
I know it's something you're involved with.
So we developed this thing 5 months ago. It's a know your rights tool. It works on any device, any phone. It's a know your rights tool for immigrants and citizens in this country for how to legally and lawfully fight back against ICE. When ICE knocks on your door or pulls you over or you're going to a protest or whatever, you can go to this tool on your phone, and immediately in real time, it'll tell you what you can do legally, what your rights are lawfully, the smartest practical thing to do. It's just a wonderful tool, and more immigrants in need are using it. The website is paxis.app, Paxis.app.
Paxis.app. And that's a website or that's an app? I'm confused.
No, that's the link to the actual tool. Paxis.app, A-P-P, will take you right to Paxis. You can see what it is. You can see how it works. It's free of charge. You can share it with people who you think might need it. And on that link, there's also a link to a GoFundMe page, because we're crowdfunding, raising money from Americans to help us get this into the hands of people who need it.
That's brilliant, because, I've had some experience with law enforcement working as I've done. But if somebody's knocking on my door and, they're in combat gear and a vest, and they start shouting at me, I'm dollars to donuts, Joe. My mind would go blank.
Bingo. Exactly. And that's what's happening and been happening every day in this country for the past 18 months. And just a simple tool on your phone can protect you.
Well, I think that's absolutely wonderful. And I also am a big fan of The Social Contract, which is your Substack. And there's a podcast related to that too, right?
It's called The Social Contract. Every day, Monday through Friday at 10 o'clock Central Time, every morning. And
that's live on Substack or live on YouTube or both?
It's live on YouTube, Substack, every social media platform. Social Contract with Joe Walsh. That's the podcast. But I'm a big, huge fan of Joan Esposito. And Joan Esposito, if I do leave the Democratic Party someday soon to become an independent again, you still have to have me on. Without question, Mr. Walsh. Without question. I'm in love. And I will even, because I'm going to I've had a number of texters who are very interested and fascinated by what you have to say, but I'm also going to get a bunch of grief. But I've always said this show isn't about an echo chamber. It isn't about preaching to the choir. It is about a place where different ideas and different perspectives can be discussed. And as long as somebody doesn't come on here and try to lie to me, I'm okay with that. That's wonderful, Joan. That's what we need. That's what this country desperately needs. Well, take care of yourself, Mr. Walsh. Thank you, Joan. Love being on with you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. We're going to take a break. We're going to be back with more after this.
This is Chicago's Progressive Talk, 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and online at WCPT820.com, where facts matter.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
I just spent a couple of minutes looking at that Paxis.app on my computer, and it really does. It has, if ICE is at your front door, here's what you say, here's what you don't say, here's what you do. It is really, really good advice. I am so pleased to have one of my other favoritist people in the whole world on right now. Congressman Jonathan Jackson is here. Jonathan, how are you?
How are you, Joan? You just have too much love to give. I heard your other program.
Not for everybody, Jonathan.
I don't know
Not for everybody.
Okay. Thank you, Joan.
Oh, Jonathan, there's so much going on right now. It's hard to even figure out where to start. What's been on your mind today?
Groceries and Medicaid. That hunger is real in the United States of America. That concerns me. This war is inextricably bound and tied, connected to all the issues that we're feeling and fueling right here in the United States. The cost of fertilizer is up. Food costs are up. The diesel cost is up, and all that translates into the cost of everyday people. The stories I'm hearing from people that are simply at the end of their wits. So, I want people to feel encouraged, and I know we separate the church and the religion, but please stay prayerful, stay mindful. Every cloud runs out of rain sometimes. I see people feeling a level of desperation that I've not experienced in a long time. And so I want to tell people to stay encouraged. So that's my big takeaway.
I know that you were part of a committee hearing recently where the UN ambassador, Mike Waltz, was being interviewed or talked to. Tell me about that.
Well, he gives us an update in foreign affairs, and I've asked him specifically about Cuba. Why can't they receive any oil? He said that they could. I said, we have a blockade around the island nation of 10 million people, which is an act of war. Are we actively engaged at war with Cuba? He says, no. I said, so are you saying other countries can provide them oil? He says, yes. So that was not true. That was inaccurate. Mm-hmm. It was a falsehood. I don't want to say a lie, but I don't know the other word for it. A prevarication, but it was just wrong. It's not the truth. So we got growing, if you will, insecurity and desperation on those island nations. We're talking about Ukraine, we're talking about Gaza, we're talking about places around the world. We need to also look at our own hemisphere. So there's enormous instability in Haiti, 13 million people, enormous instability in Cuba, and we're exacerbating the conditions in both. I just got back from Venezuela, Haiti, and I was in Cuba over the Easter period of the beginning of April. And so if they're combating immigration, migration issues, where are people coming from? There's going to be another wave of people unless we change our foreign policy to help people where they are. People don't want to come to this country and travel thousands of miles and have no money and don't speak the language unless they had some very horrendous conditions at home that made them flee. So I think people need to recognize that people aren't just coming here because they wanted to. They didn't have an option. Things are just that bad at home. And some of our policies have created that level of desperation.
I want to talk to you about Venezuela because one theory being floated now is that Trump is going to announce during or after the midterms that he has intel that Venezuela specifically interfered with our elections, that they hacked our voting machines or something else, which is why he has to invalidate the midterm elections. Did you see anything in Venezuela that would lead you to believe that they are getting ready to hack our election?
Not at all. And we don't have one election in our United States. We have 50 state elections on one day. And so it's not a coordinated system from local. We've got a city of Chicago, Department of Voting, you got a county voting agency, and you got a state agency. So for those that have the conspiracy, it's not unified, it's disjointed. And no, we have taken their president out. We have installed the president of our choice. We've stopped Ms. Dulce Rodriguez, who was the Nobel Prize winner that gave Trump her award that he gladly accepted, that he's not asking for her to be at the table for reconciliation with the majority of the people and the sitting government. So it's so convoluted. I think he's doing that, and I have to agree with Congressman Walsh. What he was saying is that I anticipate and I pray that it's not true. Violence at the polls this coming fall. Either you get your numbers up and bring your people out, or if you're unpopular, you try to drive other people's numbers down. And now what he's engaging in is from the SAVE Act to the postal office on the mail-in ballots to having troops on the streets. He's going to get more aggressive, and I can even see violence. He did it before, so it's not new. And then Mr. Blanche that just got in.
Oh, I was just going to say, and the really sad part is that the Department of Justice isn't going to do anything to stand up to him in any way, shape, or form.
I mean, it's just terrible. So, yeah, I think we've got to come out and overwhelm the polls. We can't come out just in great numbers. The numbers have to be so overwhelmingly convincing. And I don't know why the senators would give the president his personal attorney. The attorney general is supposed to be the people's attorney. He's letting him hire his personal attorneys that have found a way for Elaine Maxwell to be in a cushy environment, to pardon all the people from January 6th that killed officers. I mean, it's just really sad. Let me tell you, Joan, the part that gets to me is I oftentimes tell my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, children are watching us. So what kind of precedent are we setting?
Yeah. Jonathan, I have a question you may or may not be able to answer because it really puzzles me. Talking about Todd Blanche, the vote that could have stopped it, instead the vote that made it happen was Bill Cassidy's vote. Bill Cassidy, a senator Donald Trump primaried out of office, ended his political career. A doctor who also voted for RFK Jr. Bill Cassidy knew he could stop Todd Blanche, but when he made that vote at 3 or 4 in the morning, he was crying. Oh, I know people will be mad at me for doing this. Why? He's got nothing left to lose. He's old. He doesn't need another job. He's got money. It's not like he needs to, be a lobbyist or sit on some board. Donald Trump ended his political life, and still he toes the line. Why, Jonathan? Why?
You have another question? I mean, like, have you no shame? I mean, didn't he do the same thing? Well, there's one thing I can certainly appreciate about President Trump. I say this tongue in cheek, is that he's an equal opportunist on turning on people that were close to him. So when you see Jeff Sessions, who was the first person to endorse him and take him down, and then the way he took out Jeff Sessions, and then they all fall back in line. Then when Jeff Sessions decided to run for his Senate seat again, Trump would not support him, and Jeff Sessions was begging him, Trump is doing a great job. I'm like, he ignored you. So you had Tillerson, North Carolina, that could have done something different. Yep. He didn't. The president took him out. Cronin, he took him out. And they all have votes.
And they still fall in line, and I don't understand it. The only one I respect is Thomas Massie, because Trump really screwed him over, and Thomas Massie is ready to burn it all down. And I can, maybe I'm not a very nice person, Jonathan, but I can relate to that a lot more than I can relate to the Tillises and the Cornins and the Cassidys.
You talking about some burn, baby, burn? You're funny. No, I definitely understand that. It's like, I don't know, it's like shameless. So he took out 3 of his own. He's eating his own. It's like a Greek tragedy. Mm-hmm. And they will still vote with him. It makes no logical sense. The only sense I can make out of it, Joan, would be that they want to stay in. They want to go to the Christmas party, and they will.
God.
And so they don't want to be on bad paper with any of the corporations that, and it's just not them. You say he doesn't need any money, but they've got children that become lobbyists and, children that may want to run for office. So they want to stay in with the party and don't want to be persona non grata in the eyes of the president. But if it's for a matter of principle, like, you'd have to say no. And I'm not a fan of of Mike Pence, but I do find the good that you can say about everybody and somebody. Mike Pence, the nation owes him a debt of gratitude. Yes. He held the line. He would not cave. I mean, we were on the precipice of a coup. Yeah. And Mike Pence, I don't know what happened, but he did the right thing for the right reason. And I even talk about George W. Bush. I let people know as the president attacks diversity, equity, and inclusion and goes on saying that he wants to redo American history because it's been divisive. Well, we didn't create the history. It is what it is. But if you look at George W. Bush, he dedicated the land for the African American History Museum in Washington, D.C. in a prominent place. His brother and his father, George H., dedicated the land for the King Monument in Washington, D.C. So that wasn't Bill Clinton or Barack Obama. Those were two Republicans. So if they do some good, I'd be glad to say it. And the things I disagree with, I'll say that as well.
Yeah. Jonathan, we need to take a break. I'm talking with Congressman Jonathan Jackson. We will be right back with more after this.
Hey, Google, play WCPT.
Streaming Chicago's Progressive Talk from TuneIn.
Hey, are you interested in buying a home or refinancing the one you've got? Call Team Hochberg, your trusted local lender with nearly 800 five-star Google reviews, like this one posted by Chuck. My wife and I were looking to purchase a condo to be near our grandchildren and weren't sure where to begin, so we contacted Team Hochberg, who did an excellent job. David Hochberg was a breath of fresh air, no baloney, and very transparent, which was refreshing. He knows his stuff like the back of his hand. No gimmicks, no BS. Thank you, David. Chuck and his wife wanted to move closer to their grandkids, so they contacted Team Hochberg. David answered their questions, helped them purchase a condo, and that condo turned out to be exactly what they wanted near their grandkids. If you want the same outstanding service that Chuck, his wife, and thousands of our listeners have received, do what I did. Call Team Hochberg, 855-563-2843, or go online, 56david.com. That number again, 855-563-2843, or on the web, 56david.com. ACM Equal Housing Lender, NMLS 643114.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
With me is quite possibly the best congressman in the entire state of Illinois. Jonathan Jackson is here. And Jonathan, what's going to happen in the final months of this term? And then I want to ask you what Dems' plans are for the future. But first of all, what's going to happen in the remaining time of this year?
Well, the economy, I believe, is going to continue to contract. You're still beginning to feel the effects of the one big bill. There were $19 billion of food cuts to the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program. So grocery stores are down almost 20% in revenue. So you're going to anticipate some shrinkage in the amount of Family Dollar food stores and places that are food deserts. And hospitals and other places are getting prepared for the Medicaid cuts that will come in January of 27 to the next 5 months. And so that's going to be a big rollout. Those are two big things that are going to affect us very locally and domestically. And the administration isn't being transparent with the numbers. Things are a little tighter than what they anticipate as far as the job market, but they're not saying it, and they're withholding information. So I expect the president to continue his rampage on this voting with the SAVE Act. When we go back into session around September 3rd, I think you're going to start seeing, I don't know, I'm concerned. I'm very concerned. Particularly, there seems to be a little spike in sort of these violence. Like somebody's got to answer what happened with Nolan Wells in Mississippi.
That's it. Nolan Wells is a case I really haven't talked about. So explain what the situation with Nolan Wells.
It's in the state of Mississippi, African-American young man out with many of he's the only guy in the group of maybe 8 or so young men, and they go boating. Seems to be these are his classmates, and then they can't find him after the end of the evening. And so 2 days later, they find him, his phone, all the other young men made it back home. Somebody had his phone. The messages have been deleted, and they said it was accidental. And now there have been 2 autopsies. Things aren't adding up, but it was on federal property off the coast of Mississippi. So the FBI ought to simply take a look at it so we can get to the bottom of it.
Yeah.
And
I didn't realize that message. I just heard that they found his phone. I didn't realize there were messages on his phone that had been deleted.
Yep. And so there's just some curious things that have happened. There have been, this past fall, I think there were 2, what they said, suicides in Mississippi from people having hung themselves. So it's just things that we would ask the federal government to take a look into. We don't know, and to let the rumors go away, the federal government ought to come in and take a look so people can be relieved. And it's not the first time that the local authorities in Mississippi have failed. The federal government isn't going in there. Now, if you got the Attorney General, if he can take a day and go and spend time with Elaine Maxwell to make sure she gets into a
country club prison.
A country club prison, and get her dog and get her yoga, her comfort dog and her yoga, but he can't look into, a murder, or Kash Patel is on his way for a private meeting in Russia with Putin. And so we got to be able to address violence and people that have been harmed right here in the United States. So I think people are getting a little more anxious, and I just hope the president, he watches television every day, all day. It'd be nice if he spoke out on this and sent words of comfort to the family.
He doesn't. He's not capable of words of comfort. He truly isn't. I believe he is a man devoid of empathy. I don't think, how many times in his first term and even in this term have there been tragedies, and he just doesn't seem to know how to deal with people. His default is to just ignore what happened. This is never a guy. I don't think he's ever going to care what happened to Nolan Wells. And I don't think he is capable of offering any kind of empathy. This is a guy who wants, all of our museums stripped of any references to African Americans or their accomplishments or their artwork, for God's sake.
I tell you, it's interesting. I was thinking about it the other day when I saw the plane yesterday that he went in one door and out the other and left he covered himself and left the reporters on the plane.
Yeah, in his food container. Yes, his catering container.
And his catering truck. So he has his own 757. He's got that plane parked. And Air Force One technically is a designation of whatever plane the president is on. He has supreme rights in the air. And if that first 747 goes down, mechanical, has an issue, there's a second plane, identical. There are 2 747s that are 6 hours apart. Anywhere he goes in the world, he's not, out of sync for more than 6 hours, grounded. And now he's got this other plane from Qatar. Most people would be happy to get a free ticket. Some other people would be happy to get an upgrade. This guy has got 4 jumbo planes, and it's not enough. And you never hear him talk about, I read a letter from a woman who's lost her benefits, or I read a letter from a man who just got a new job. A child had written my office and asked me about peace, or there's no personal connection. People are struggling. He dismisses it, didn't happen, and then starts attacking. It's to your point, it lacks empathy.
How do you think, speaking of that, of the fact that he has those qualities, which I think also led him to begin a war of choice in Iran, that he now that it didn't wrap up after the first bombs were dropped, he doesn't have a clue what to do in Iran. And I'm sure you've seen the reports today from the military newspapers that on the USS Lincoln, at least 3 sailors have tried to commit suicide by jumping off the ship into the ocean because they were supposed to have their deployment wrapped up in May. It's been extended. They don't even know when or how they're going to get off this ship. And it's causing a huge mental health crisis. Supposedly they have problems with food. They have problems with sanitation. I mean, this guy doesn't know what to do. Is there anybody he would listen to who could tell him how to get out of this mess, Jonathan?
Let me tell you, you've got 5,000 people that are on that ship for 270 days, and it's all steel, so it's got to feel prison-like, and it's gray. It's nothing attractive about those things. And you're sitting out there in the water, and you're launching planes and missiles or whatever else they have on there, which gives off heat. So that thing has got to be hot in the middle of the ocean in the summertime in a desert environment. And those young men and women, they didn't sign up for that. 270 days. And every day you're wondering if this is your last day on Earth and what strikes. Pete Hegseth ought to be ashamed of himself. You know, on a closer to home level, I see it in Washington, D.C. at something very similar. D.C. is technically built on a swamp. It's hot, humid, and it can hover around 80, 90 degrees, 90, 100 degrees. Yeah, in August, so it's good to be out there in August. And to see our armed soldiers standing on the corners of D.C. in their gear, and they don't have summer outfits like the post office or policemen that ride some bicycles with some shorts on. They've got the same gear on that they wear in the winter and the summer, which is hot, with about 15 pounds of armament, of vests and bullets and batons. Like, who would do that to their own troops? But Mr. Hegseth hadn't served, and Mr. Trump hasn't served. This is all decoration for him. Yep. It's cruel. It's mean. And for them to let out the people for January 6th related that killed officers and didn't feel bad for the families of, and these men and women had gone through trial, went to court. They had a jury. The system worked.
Yep.
And he just canceled all that. That is so mean and so cruel, Joan.
Yeah, I agree 100%. He doesn't think about it. I was saying earlier today on the show. Go ahead.
No, I'm hearing that it's almost 7 people that have attempted suicide on that big USS Abraham
more
Lincoln.
Than I thought. But, you know, what I was saying is he doesn't, to him, the members of the military, like on that ship and others, they're just pawns. They're just pieces on a checkerboard. They're not people. They're not anybody whose situation he empathizes with in any way, shape, or form. And
but didn't he say that about John McCain? He says I don't have respect for people that got caught.
Yeah.
You know,
we should have known right then and there that he was bad news. Jonathan, thank you so much. I hope you will come back over and over again. We love hearing what you're learning and what you're doing on Capitol Hill.
Joan, I'm going to lock in. If you can, I'd love to do you much more frequently.
Okay.
It's a lot going on.
Maybe, what do you think? Once a month or, maybe once a week, maybe once every day? I don't know. I'm flexible, Jonathan.
Maybe. We're going to try to get to once a week. Let's lock it in. We'll make it happen.
Sounds good. This will be our weekly segment with Jonathan Jackson, Congressman from Illinois. I love the sound of it. Maybe we can even get you your own music. Huh? What do you think about that? Your own jingle?
Maybe we have to go to the studio and record something together.
We'll take care of you, Jonathan. Thank you so much.
Love you, Joan.
It's a pleasure to talk to you each and every time. And that's going to do it for me and for the congressman. Driving it home with Patty Vasquez is up next. Ken Mejia Beal is her guest host today. Hey, and she's going to talk to Bob Ryder, who is the president of the Chicago Federation of Labor, and Joanna Whaley, 2026 Democratic candidate for Michigan State Rep. And tomorrow, of course, Richard kicks us off at 6 a.m. He's going to be talking with Jennifer Polka. Do you know who that is? She's on the board of Recoding America Fund. That should be fascinating. He's also going to talk to the Democratic candidate for governor in Florida. That primary, by the way, next Tuesday we will be watching, and we hope David Jolly will do very, very well. I will also be back tomorrow. I know that's a real shock to you, isn't it? We're going to kick off our day tomorrow talking with retired Major General Randy Manner. And boy, oh boy, is there lots to talk with him about, including this horrible situation of sailors committing suicide, that and other things. So please join me tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Until then, have a great evening and good night.